Hi YouTube. We're here with the ASH26. Get this thing fired back up. Check out the flaps and crow here. Flaps, crow. I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's crow. There's my full-length flap. So I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out so far. That's my speed flaps, which is actually spoilers. And those are also disabled. Throttle cut is on, by the way. Those are disabled by the throttle. So all sorts of cool stuff going on there. Where we left off last, we were running out of memory and basically just had these screws to put in. I ended up adding another 2 more central screws here, just because it was wanting to pucker in the middle a little bit. So really just comes down to fine-tuning some things, like trying to get this to line up squarely, and that's really not a super hard thing to do. And then of course we've got to figure out what we're going to do on this, because we need to kind of fill that in. So that's the next step in this endeavor, is to kind of get that worked out. I don't know if you guys can remember, but we ended up cutting this piece out, which is just a piece of balsa wood. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Well, obviously we want to try to get this so that it's not being deployed in our normal position there. Now you can go in and sub-trim this, but remember that when you sub-trim this, right, you can only sub-trim one way. And the other thing is, that's going to screw up the stabilizer. Because the way that this thing is configured, I've got my Lemon RX 7-channel stabilizer, and I'm using all the channels, with the exception of auxiliary 3, which would be the 8th channel, which is my master gain. I'm using as my on-off as well, and it works beautifully. So I'll just demonstrate real quick. Stabilizer's on, so you can see the aileron moving. Now it's off. Continues to be off, off, and then back on, regardless of the gain position. But you see how that light stays green? That's because technically the stabilizer is not off. I'm just turning the master gain all the way down. And I'm doing it in a hurry with one switch. And I realize this is just one axis. There's also a yaw and then a pitch axis, but it's much harder to demonstrate it quickly. So real quick too, with flaps off, with full flaps and crow, there's not as much to move. Off. So I wanted to show you that, because we kind of ran short on memory. Now in order to adjust this, again, not exactly rocket science here, but I want to show you how this works. I'll show you the easiest way is if you have a pair of pliers that have like a kind of a flat on there, then usually like a bent pair works real nice. So what we want to do is we want this to be flush here. So we can just take the 2 of these. And usually you see how this one's kind of at an angle? That's because I've already adjusted and screwed with it a little bit. So I'm going to grab this down here. I'm going to support right here. I'm just going to bend them apart from one another. Now you notice it didn't change the position very much. That's okay, that's normal. Okay, so we'll do a little bit more. In fact, it seems like it's made it worse. Well, that's not necessarily what's happening. You have to start by bending one axis and then you bend the other axis to match, or the other bend point, and then that'll force things back to where they belong. Okay. You can see how nice and smooth that is now. So it's just matched up pretty well perfectly. Now let's deploy the flaps. Now don't be worried about this here, guys. There's a little droop here. That's actually that's trim. So there's some aileron trim in there. And just to prove it, it's at 38% or 38. Oops. Okay, so there's 0 and you can see how close we are. So we'll go back to 38. Okay, cool. So now everything is working. We have everything mounted. Hypothetically, this one would be done with the exception of this little gap. So that's what we're going to work on real quick. I can put this stuff away. This should be fairly straightforward. And so I'm a little bit reluctant to film it, but you know, it is what it is. I really kind of wish I could move this over so it's out of the way, because it is quite tricky to get all this stuff taken apart since I don't have ready access to the screw to undo this, to pull it out without undoing 6 screws. It just turns into a bit of a fiasco. And if you ask me, as much as that is not pretty, having that opened like that, it's really not the end of the world. In fact, I'm a little bit tempted to just take some of this sticky monocoat, whoops, for now, that I had from another project with dog hairs in it. Not my dogs. Goodness gracious. This came from Esteban. It's Esteban's dog. Esteban, he makes cameos in my YouTube videos all the time. He is quite the character in our channel, so you can see not quite long enough to reach all the way over, but to be perfectly honest, it'd be super easy to do that. I'm sort of tempted to do it that way. Oh, and I wanted to show you one other thing, guys. Look at this. For those of you thinking, you've destroyed that wing, it's never going to be strong enough, let me just show you. Okay, there is an extremely limit, and I'm putting a lot of torque on this. Okay, I'm not trying to break it, but I'm just showing you guys. This thing is solid still. And yes, I walk around carrying big heavy things all day, and so I have a death grip. So when you shake my hand, you're like, "Oh, stop it." So breaking this wing, I could break this wing if I felt like it. I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to show you, it's very strong still. I have no doubts about the strength and integrity of this wing. Of course, it would have been slightly stronger with that. I don't doubt it for a second. But I'm very confident with what we've got here. So, that being said, we should be able to just go ahead and unplug these things. Well, I guess I don't have to unplug that part. And that'll at least make some room. Okay, so we've moved stuff out of the way. So now, one thing that's nice about a longer control rod as opposed to like this is that sometimes you can get lucky and make your bend to get these things out of here. We'll see real quick. Like I said, sometimes. I think I picked the wrong tool for the job. It's kind of comforting that it's not going to come out easy, because in doing that I actually bent this rod. It's good to know that it's nice and sturdy and it'll hold up to the rigors of everyday life. I just kind of wish it would have made it a little easier on me. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to push this. One thing I also realize I haven't done yet is I haven't trimmed this down. Now, I am going to choose to abstain from cutting this down yet. And the reason I'm going to do that is because once I get this all assembled, let's suppose we find out, hey, we don't have enough deflection on this flap. Okay, if we don't have enough deflection, I can still come in and impact change. Okay, I've already cut the other end off, so if I chop off the top two, then I'm done. So if it's not hurting anything yet, we'll leave it. The other thing is you've got the body of the fuse that's going to be down on the ground, so it's not like this is ever going to hit. If it hits, the plane's screwed. So, not too terribly worried about it. Alright, so now to fill some gaps reluctantly. This is the end that had come off of the inside there. Okay, so we can just break that off. So really, we're just going to go in here and just very obviously make some cuts. And I'll show you my tricky method for doing this. It's really not tricky or hard. There's a flat side and a curved side. The curved side is the side we didn't get flat. And the tips and tricks that'll come with this, like I said, super simple. Looks like we're a little bit too wide to fit. I just cut my finger a little bit, but it's all part of the show, guys. Luckily that was probably glue. Okay, so now one trick is to stab into that with your knife. Okay? Get your glue. I'm going to be using medium CA. And I'm going to just do a quick test fit. I need to cut that at a different angle with my blade. Make sure it fits. As it will, but just barely. Now you do want this fairly tight. So we're going to use gap filling glue, and this, my friends, will secure any sort of loss that you had in strength will be regained here, or at least very close to what it had been prior. Make sure the angle of attack for your stab is approximately where you need the handle to be. This is the only side I didn't get glue onto. Whoops. Okay, now I didn't have my tool ready, but I should have. And this is my second tool, is going to be that doohickey. Son of a gun, fell down in there. You're probably thinking all hope is lost. Well, you might be right, depending on how far it falls. Like that. Almost fell all the way in. At which point you would be screwed. But luckily, it didn't fall all the way in. Okay? It's super convenient once you get glue all over it, because then it just sticks to your fingers like really bad. Now this one's more convenient because I've got an access to get in there from the other side, and so we've got additional help that we won't have on the other ones. But as you can see, this is going to be a bit of a fiasco. But that's, you know, crap, that's half my videos. So I think we'll just keep trying until we get it right. I'm going to get my kicker ready, because as soon as that thing is close, I'm going to kicker it in there. We're trying this again. Part of the problem is my X-Acto knife blade is just so extremely sharp right now that it's cutting through like butter. Normally it's not quite that sharp. I mean, it might be sharp, but it's not that sharp. So I may need to switch to a less sharp X-Acto knife blade, which sounds ridiculous, I know. Okay, I'm sick of fighting it, but I'm going to be patient and get it right. There we go. Okay. So basically, now that we have that in, we'll just give a spritz of kicker and let it sit for a second. Alright, so that one's done. Now we just need to do the rest of the chambers. This should be a pretty straightforward process, but it is part of the process, so I should probably show you guys. Sure, maybe some of you guys have an affinity for watching other people doing work, because it reminds you of how glorious it is to not have to do it yourself. I wonder if that's what's going on here. So there's the cut point. As you can see, it's a really crappy not square cut. So I'll fix that right now. And get the other side. So now we will check again, and as you can see, this one is quite short now, so we'll try the next chamber. Way short, way short, way short, way short, not way short. So we'll just take it down there because we cut it a little too short. I need another 1/4 inch or so off. This is a highly technical style called guess and check. Just try not to overguess, because then it's called check and redo. Okay, just a little bit more. And I did promise you guys that I wouldn't make you sit through the whole other wing. So I'll do the other wing off camera, and then I'll come back and give you guys like a follow-up video, which will be the video before the flight, remaiden flight. I always do remaidens after I'm done with a repair or a mod, to prove that it worked or didn't or whatever. Just share findings. I know you guys go through all the trouble watching these videos, so you probably want to see how it turned out. A lot of people on YouTube do a lot of type of videos, but I would like to think that when you guys sit and watch a video series for this many hours, minutes, whatever it is you watch, you'd probably want to see the end, but you know the outcome, not just take my word for it that it's going to be awesome. But I've seen a lot of channels that don't do that, and I'm like, why are they not showing you how it turned out? It's like, yeah, go out and do this thing and it works great. Well, I'm going to prove it to you. Alright guys, you're getting the tripod treatment today just because I can't handle it anymore. Alright guys, you're getting the tripod just because the helmet's killing my neck tonight, and that's been kind of a common problem. So we're going to take and give you guys a different vantage point for a little bit. Alright. So one thing about this is that as you're doing this process, make sure you don't get too much glue. Where you don't mean to, because that glue will make more thickness, which can prevent the flap system from deploying properly. That can cause all sorts of grief for you right after you spend all this effort to put these things in. So you see, I'm just covering it up real quick with that CA. And then when you wipe over it with a Q-tip like that, what it's going to do is it's going to spread the CA, but then it just starts kicking it right away, even though you're not using kicker yet. Okay, so a little bit of kicker. So we have this chamber and this chamber. And it's basically the same exact process all the way across. So it's a little bit on the boring side and a little awkward to film. So I sort of hate to film this part, but I guess we'll go with it for a minute and see how it goes. I'm just holding it next to the rib. Just cutting it just in front of where I think I need it. And then I can bring it over after I score and fold. That felt good. Okay, so just a little bit too long, and then a little bit too wide. This wood tends to be a little bit, this particular piece was almost tapered down quite a bit. So I want to make sure that the thicker portion goes where I want the thicker portion. Now this one, I don't have glue applied in there first. And to be honest, that's a fine way of doing it if you can get the glue to run. So you'd probably use like a thin CA if you're going to go that route. And the thin CA is, you know, like the, instead of the pink cap, you would go with like the purple cap. But in our case, that's not what we're going to be using. I also have the white cap, which is thin CA as well. And it might actually be a little easier to do that but I would rather guarantee a better result with a gap filling glue, because the glue that doesn't make it into this immediate joint is it's gonna drip down and go into the surrounding area anyway, which is also suitable and helpful to the strengthening of the structure here. Now that was kind of a mess because it fell down into the glue, and now I've got glue all over this. Well, it's not the end of the world really, but it's certainly not wanting to stay up in position, and so that gets a little irritating. So what I'm going to do is I'll grab another tool to help, and that other tool is going to be a toothpick, okay? So I'll just stab a toothpick into the other end, and then I can manipulate 2 points. I hate having to do it this way, but it's kind of it's just an awkward enough spot that you kind of got to do it this way. Oh, that son of a gun. That son of a gun. Okay, so now I'm just lifting it. And that's fine. That's suitable. Again, this is not really going to be the most pretty part of the plane. It's just you're kind of going for strength here that was removed when you decided to install these flaps. Getting a new Q-tip here just to get that CA spread. Now this gap filling stuff is kind of nice because you can actually take and, you know, fill in a low point there like that. And once you get a little kicker on there, it works pretty much right away. Within about a second, it's pretty much set. Depending on how deep you make it. Just be careful you don't get it back up into the tip, and that does actually happen a lot. So just be careful. Alright, so working our way down. Need to go just a touch more. So guys, it's Christmas Eve. I'm filming this video on Christmas Eve. And it's just about Christmas Day, because it's late like usual. If you guys are at home, trying to avoid doing lots of work for that, and your wife is slaving away at the stove or whatever she's doing, my wife is cooking breakfast and different things for tomorrow, so I will be enjoying it, but I am currently hiding doing this. So wish me luck in surviving when I'm done with this video. I trust that she's fine with it because I'm out of her hair. I don't know about you guys, but some people would say I get away with a lot. I think I do. Just don't tell her that. Okay, so a little bit of gap filling glue there. A little gap filling glue there. This time I'm going to do a little bit different technique. I'm going to get the gap filling glue in. This is tricky. I'm going to hold it where I want it, and then I'm going to spray kicker. I'm going to let that kicker work for just a second. Once that glue sets, then you're good to go. You can literally take your knife out. Now when you do it that way, you're going to have a heck of a time getting your gap filling glue in. So you'll just have to kind of say a prayer, hope for the best. I mean, it's called gap filling for a reason, I suppose, right? Just be careful what gap it fills. If you put it all the way up into your finished area, it might be kind of slobby looking. We'll see though. We'll see, guys. And this is where it starts stinking up the air and burning your eyes and stuff like that. So if it gets too bad, or if you start seeing, like, you know, friends that aren't real, you've had too much CA for one time, turn on the exhaust fan, you know. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 more chambers to go. I'll give you guys a quick closer look. And when I say a closer look, I got a light here that might make that a little better look. Boy, that light really sucks, doesn't it? This light's way better. So basically we're flush all the way down now. We got a gap, 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 gap. And that's where we are right now. Make sure we're lined up here. Okay guys, so this has got to be a topper for insane amounts of boredom within these videos. But this is the stark reality we face. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and pause it, and then I'll give you guys a final look after we're done with those 4 or 5 pieces there. Alright, so I just got done cutting the last chamber, the wood in there. So now this is all solid, at least as it pertains to the surface, it's solid. So now if we wanted to cover that with monocoat or some sort of a covering, we could do that. Not that there's something particularly great about monocoat, in my opinion. So that's that, guys. That's pretty much back to whatever strength we had before. And you can see kind of here where the air brake would have been. But you can see we don't have any bulge from the other servo, which is nice. I had really hoped that these wires would come out in the same position, but I don't know that we're going to get that lucky. So go ahead and get the iron warmed up, and we'll take some of these last bumps out and see if this last little bit will stick back down. Alright guys, so what we're going to do is while this iron's warming up, I'm going to take some alcohol in this cotton swab, just a clean cotton swab, and we're going to try to take and make sure that all the kicker and any other debris is removed from this area here, because we use kicker to set up the CA as we were working, and that stuff can really deteriorate the adhesive qualities this stuff. So we definitely want to investigate that. You can see where we got a couple of pass-throughs with the blades. It would probably be best to recover this area with a piece of monocoat and just make it look really nice. But we're going to see what we can get done with the heat gun. We'll see if we can get this smoothed out nicely. But let's just be real, guys. When you're looking at that wing from the front, you're not going to know. From the back, you'll see the color, but with the flaps deployed at all, you won't see it. So we'll see. It may not be such a big deal to leave it unfinished. It may be a really big deal. Depends on how much you end up seeing as it goes by. So that iron's got to be hot by now, and it appears to be pretty hot. So just got a couple of spots here in particular that I've got my eye on. Right in the middle, there's one right there. I don't know if you guys can see the ripples there. I don't know if some stuff got under there, some kicker or what, but usually kind of have to work around it to get this stuff to release and then flatten out. There we go, so I got it to flatten out. And usually on the edges like this, I'll just come back and work the edges a little bit. And that'll wrap it over the edge so it doesn't want to let go all the time. Because all this work I'm doing is actually a lot more aggressive to the wing than it would be under normal use, which is basically packing it in and out of the car. So now I'm just going to see if I can get it to heat down into that tight area down there, which my guess is it's probably not going to do so great with that. But that's not the end of the world even if it didn't. Sorry if I came out of picture there, guys, for a minute. Need to get a different type of iron so I can get into these tight spots like this. It does seem to be holding down, but it's just not looking great. It's not the end of the world, guys. It's not a big deal to me. I would love it to look perfect, but I would rather have flaps and have it look totally perfect. I'm actually kind of glad it didn't have the air brakes, because I heard the air brakes weren't so great on this particular model because the position was not good. That's too much washout for the horizontal stabilizer and rudder and all that stuff. Mostly the elevator, I think, is what they were talking about. But okay, so now I'm just going up and down the control surface here on the outside. It's not as bad on the outside, or the top side in this case. But yeah, so that's all you really have to do. Now this this area right here is of more importance, just because it's a spot where it's going to want to come undone, I bet. It's going to be really hard to get there with the plane assembled. I do not disassemble my plane every time I take it where I fly at, but that won't necessarily always be the case. So, oop, just noticed another spot here. So there you have it, guys. For this video, the flaps are done on this wing, and that's pretty much the whole situation. There's not going to be a whole lot more to them. So the last step for me is to actually go through and duplicate this on the unfinished wing, and it's going to be literally the same process. So unless I come up with something good, and like I said before, like with this white stuff, I could conceivably use that to tuck down around this bend. In fact, I might have some pieces of it. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I had almost forgotten I had this. And what this is this is a self adhesive backed piece of essentially what is monocoat. But this stuff matches really close. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to cut a piece, and we'll see what type of adhesion we get before we get too in depth. So if I cut it from here to here, and then I want it to fit into the groove, that's what I'm talking about. So I'll probably cut something like this. And I'm just aiming for the same spot. On my fingertip with scissors, so I get a nice clean cut. Okay, so this piece here, we'll just wipe it down. It's got a little bit of dust on it is all. But that's on the outside coat. Okay, so now what I need to do is just try to drop that down in, but I think what I might do first is fold a V in there. And this V will not be quite even. I'm going to fold a little bit more on the one side than the other. And what that'll do for us, this is compliments of Esteban, my cameo stand-in on this YouTube channel. Esteban. He's my flying buddy. Okay, so, see how it's not even? That's on purpose. Okay? And the only reason I fold it first like that is so that I can try to force it down into the crack. And really, I should... Nah, I'll do that one later. Because it's going to have to be two pieces anyway. Alright, so now I need to pull the backing off. Okay, now I'm going to push this so it opens up as much as possible. Okay. Now this is unlike the regular monocoat that would be just like heat activated. So the backing is pretty thick compared to the actual product, which is weird. Like you can see that's like cardboard almost. But this stuff works pretty good, except that it's wanting to kind of catch itself on the seam. That's not expected. What the heck are you doing, you sticky stuff? Why did you do that? It's like the seam was backward or something, but I know for sure I did it the right way. I don't understand exactly what happened there. So I'm going to try to turn it inside out again, which is what I already tried. Okay, now I'm going to attempt to get this on nice and square on the control surface here. Okay? And then I'm just going to work it back and forth. I'll use some alcohol. There's some nasty edges there. That is so weird. That seam that I worked into it was a complete and utter failure. So now that's not big enough. Oh, that's hilarious. Still got a little alcohol on this, so we'll clean that up. Now, there's nobody saying this isn't going to be just fine, but I definitely cut too little of the material. The trouble is, I still need a little bit more now, but that's fine. It should be a simpler cut this time. Or simpler application this time. And the other challenge that I'm going to face is that I need to do this on the other wing as well. So as a result, I'm going to end up short somewhere. So now I get to pick where that's going to be. Okay, so the vast majority is going to go onto the wing. I'd say 60%. 50%. Let's do 50%. Okay, push that down. Go to the center and work out. Push it down nice and taut. Don't mind my ripples here. Your view makes it look so bad in the camera, it's hilarious. Because really, it's not that bad, it's just you're getting all these weird shadows on there. And also the work is not real clean. But I'm going to go for the shadows part. Alright, so that looks about 100 times better there. So I would like to continue that over here. However, if I do that, I'm probably not going to have enough to do the long piece on the other wing. So what I'll do instead is I'll probably take some of this garbage pieces from, this actually came off of an ASW28 that my friend Esteban built. And it's just strangely sticky stuff. So I think I can just unpeel it and just reapply it again. And it should work out just fine. Man, that stuff is sticky. Look at this. Look at this. I can barely unpeel it. I may have to just not. I may have to abandon that plan. Because I can't even get this stuff to unpeel. Alright, I'm throwing caution to the wind, folks. I'm going to cut enough to overlap here, just a little bit. And I'm going to cut just enough. Hope I'm not kicking myself later for this. Okay, so we got a smaller piece this time. And this piece is going to come in here and finish off this little spot. Now obviously recovering the whole surface is always a possibility if you're into that sort of thing. Of course I'm not really into that sort of thing. And I know, Ian, you're probably having an aneurysm watching me do this. And I'm sorry for that. I promise I'm not doing it to torture you. Alright, so what we've done is we've applied that. Now we're just going to work it down into the seam. We'll just slowly but surely work it down into the seam. Cover up all the ugliness in that seam, which there's a lot of it. I'm kind of stretching that until it falls down in there nice and taut. And that worked a lot easier actually than the other portion that I did. Now I'm just walking up the other side and working it out. Now, I don't know if you guys can see that very good, but there's a couple of ripples and bumps. And yes, you could just leave that. But where would be the fun in that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a heater, or my iron. This is not iron-on style, guys. But watch what happens. You can take out the bumps with it, which is crazy. It makes it so perfect. Now it does work the adhesive out sometimes because the heat. Hot! You can also just collapse those seams as well. And you end up with that. That's a pretty stinking good finish for an inside seam. It was just slopped together quickly. Pay no mind to this side, it looks like crap. Now, the question becomes, at this point, have we compromised the movement, the action of the flaps? My guess is we probably haven't. Let's just temporarily test. Oh, yes! Guys, I don't think we have. It looks pretty stinking awesome. Of course, we got the unfinished end there. And then we have the finished end over here, so I could hypothetically get another chunk to cover that up if I really cared. Which I don't think I care enough. I do care. I just care more like about my children and life than I do about that. Although I'm going to take some alcohol and I'm going to wipe this little spot here where the adhesive popped out. And look at that. Comes clean. These are the details that don't show up in the videos unless you're using a much nicer camera than a Galaxy S3. Beautiful, guys. Beautiful, I must say. I'm going to pat myself on the back. Good job, me. Now I just got to do that again. Ready, go, me. Please, don't forget to like and subscribe. Do me a favor. Post a video. Not this one. This is super boring. Post one of my good videos on your Facebook. That's my Christmas present to me from you. Yes, we'll do it, Brian. I know you will. Need to get a couple of these to go viral so that I can afford to fund my habit more. Yes, we will, Brian. Thank you, viewers. Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching, guys. Part 6 is coming to an end right now.